Pupco Studios in Oklahoma City. You're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Barry Trammell, and we are brought to you by Papa John's Pizza. Check out papajohns.com for their pizza deals and have some pizza while you're watching football or baseball. Any sort of night is a good night for Papa John's. Let's go to our inbox, Barry. We've got email questions that we're going to answer here on video, and we start with David. He says, how has this OU team internally reacted to the suspension and loss of Frank Shannon? The Sanchez headband during the Texas game was interesting to me. Has this coaching staff lost this team? Lots of questions here, Barry.
Yeah, I don't see any evidence of this. I mean, I think when you lose games like you lost in Fort Worth, like you lost to Kansas State, you start searching for reasons, for answers. I mean, there was nothing mysterious about why OU lost to Kansas State. They missed chip shot kicks. They gave up free touchdown to Kansas State on a 1-yard, 2-yard touchdown interception return. You do that against a good team, you're going to lose. And it doesn't matter what kind of mood the team is in. I don't think this OU team this coaching staff has not lost this team. I do think at times the players are confused. It looks like some disorganization in terms of getting plays in, getting calls in. I don't think that's a sign of losing the team. I think it's just a sign of a lack of communication.
Yeah, and that disorganization has led to some timeouts that I think have some fans seething. And, I think some of that's coaching. I think that's some of that's on the coaches. But I think some of that's on the players. And maybe the bigger question in my mind is this team, are these players as mentally advanced as we thought they were, as the coaches were talking about they were going to be? I mean, we heard a lot about the maturity of this bunch, how locked in they were. But then you see mental mistakes. You see, the interception return for the touchdown is a play that Trevor Knight, one of the guys that you see as the leaders of the pack, when that cornerback came up, he was supposed to check out of that and hand it off to the running back. Instead, he throws it right to the defensive back. So to me, Barry, I don't think they've lost the team either, but I think there's some questions about just how locked in mentally these players are. And I don't think it has anything to do with losing the team in the locker room. All right, back to the inbox from Danny. He says, who recruited the offensive lineman currently on the OSU roster? Joe Wickline has ownership no matter how you look at it. Barry, a question of where these linemen were recruited from, and Joe Wickline's the guy.
It's a great question because OSU offensive line has struggled mightily this year after years and years and years and years and years of quality play under Joe Wickline. Joe goes down to Texas, OSU's line sort of collapses, and you say, look, Joe Wickline, the effect is mighty. He's gone, they can't block. But it's a great question. In college football today, assistant coaches generally recruit their own positions. And OSU looks really thin on the offensive line. Is that Joe Wickline's responsibility? Has he been slack on recruiting? I think the answer is yes. Joe Wickline has not recruited in recent years as well as maybe he did a few years ago. And two, I do think OSU misses his coaching. I think he really coached those guys up. So I think you look at it both ways, but definitely Wickline has some responsibility for leaving this offensive line in such shape.
Yeah, I think there's some responsibility, but I'm not sure I think it's as much as you do, Barry, because, you look at the guys that could have potentially been on this line, a guy like Jake Jenkins, who leaves early because he gets offered a job that he can't turn down. He'd have been a starter. Devin Davis was arguably their best lineman a year ago, but he tears his knee before the year. He's still out, probably not going to return. He's a guy that he cannot get that knee back to healthy. You look at the guys that could have been on this line. I think Joe Wickline had talent there to have a pretty good line. Now, I will say this, the type of players that Joe Wickline recruited in terms of what he was looking for, that might be different than what Bob Conley wants. Some of the characteristics that Conley might go after, Wickline might not have gone after, and so the coaching and the recruiting styles maybe not meshing up. But I think the talent could have been there, but obviously it's not there. All right, Barry, let's go with Timothy. Timothy says, I think the OU offensive line isn't as good as we've been told, and Alabama was a lightning strike. More offensive line talk, Barry. What do you think?
I actually think the OU line is good, and I think they've been sort of swamped by the numbers. After Pirine ran wild against West Virginia, I think teams said, you know what, we're going to make Trevor Knight beat us. We're going to make him make the right throws, the right decisions, and see what happens. We're not going to let OU just line up and smash mouth us. And I think Trevor Knight's had his moments where he's played well, both in defeat and victory. First half against TCU, the Sooners hit all their home runs, but the second half, nothing much. Knight was okay against Texas. I thought he was really good against Kansas State, except for the one throw. But I think you're going to see that throughout the year. I think teams are going to say, all right, Trevor Knight, you beat us. Samaje Perine, we're not letting you beat us.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I do think the OU offensive line maybe isn't the world beaters that we thought after that West Virginia game. I mean, lots of talk going around how this O-line is as big or bigger than almost every NFL offensive line out there. I mean, that sort of thing sort of elevates the rhetoric about the offensive line. So maybe they're not to that level. They're definitely not to that level. This is not an offensive line that I think you could plug into an NFL team and just walk on down the field with them. But I still think they've got a lot of individual talent, a lot of collective talent, but clearly teams are really stacking the box. And then, it begs the question, too, against K-State. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I am going to say when Aaron Ripkowski got ejected for targeting and then Blake Bell is out late with the concussion-like symptoms and they don't have two of their sort of auxiliary blockers, that hurts, too. I know people are frustrated by that goal line stand and not being able to punch it in, but I think that was part of the equation, too. All right, one more time to the inbox, and Mark says, why did Mike Gundy take a knee before halftime with 2 timeouts and the ball at the OSU 3 with 32 seconds left? It would be nice if the Cowboys came to play to win the game and not be the homecoming weekend sacrificial win. Wow, some harsh comments here, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, OSU's on the 31, first down, lots of time left and timeouts, but here's the truth. They couldn't block. They couldn't protect Dax Garman. And when you're a coach, you have to decide, what am I going to do? What's the risk and what's the reward? The likelihood of a big OSU play, I don't think was as high as a big TCU defensive play. I mean, I think the chances of a sack, fumble, interception, whatever it might be, was higher than a big offensive pass play. I didn't mind Gundy going conservative there, taking the knee, get off the field. The momentum was rampant in TCU's way. Just get off the field. In the old days with Brandon Whedon, maybe with Clint Chelf, with Zach Robinson, when you got a high-powered offense. But this offense is not high-powered.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what people like Mark are you're going to just have to come to terms with. This isn't last year, the year before that. It's just, that's the reality of it. We talked offensive line a little bit ago, but I think in my mind it comes back to that because you've still got an extremely deep wide receiver core, still very talented guys at the wide receiver position. Even though the running backs get talked about in the inability to run, to me, Des Roland, Tyreek Hill, Rennie Childs are still very talented in the running back position, and we've seen evidence that Dax Garman in his spots can be really good too. To me, that leaves you with an offensive line that's just not as good. It's not a sexy topic. It's not something we like to talk about. But in past years, that was not a topic we talked about because those guys were solid and we never had to broach the subject. But now there's just so many variables that play out because they can't block, sacks, different things that happen because of that. And it really is a problem. They do have to play conservative and in a way they probably haven't had to play in 6-7 years. Hey, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoma.